Hello, and welcome to the latest presentation of the Rift Valley webinar series. My name is Martha Booker Johnson, and I am the host for today's talk. If you are participating in the live webinar, you can submit questions or comments in the chat module of the Zoom application at any time during the presentation, or ask a voice question by raising your hand once the presentation is complete. Today's speaker is Andrew Harvey. Andrew is a junior professor at the University of Bayreuth. His interests include the languages of the Tanzanian Rift, their documentation and description, their morphosyntax, and the histories and cultures of their speaker communities, especially as evinced through linguistic arts and language contact. Please join me in welcoming Andrew as he presents the retrospective of the RVN webinar series, Year 6.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Martha, for the introduction. So today's talk is a retrospective, and in the spirit, it needs to be said that Martha and Anna Kreut and Simon Sovella, and as webinar hosts, do work that's essential to these webinars happening. And for that, I want to say thank you to all of them for the time and the effort that they've put into these over the past years, over this past year and the past 5 years before that. So today is our Year 6 retrospective. And so it marks 6 full years of the Rift Valley Network webinars. What began when Richard Griscom and I pitched a small series of ad hoc talks now spreads from April 2019 to 2025 as a collection of regular contributions from network members and colleagues from around the world. So without being too self-congratulatory, I'd like to jump right into a look back over this year's collection of webinar talks, going over some statistics, mentioning some connections I observed, as well as talking about what's in store for the coming months. To begin, this year's webinar series featured 16 talks, which is the number we've held steady at for the past 3 years, since our switch to fortnightly schedule, as well as allowing for occasional breaks during the summer and the end of the year. This seems to provide a regular enough rhythm for people to come together and discuss. When added together, the RVN has facilitated 124 talks in total, which compared to some other rather larger venues familiar to our members, now resembles the sum of the content of a large multi-day conference with parallel sessions. Perhaps another metric worth looking at is how much time we have met over the course of the webinar series. This includes both the length of the talks as well as the time immediately after the talk, which we used for questions and answers and general commentary. So this past year, we were slightly chattier than the year before, but basically around our average. RVN talks being around an hour in length, they seem to fill a nice niche in a world where most academic talks are now 20 to 30 minutes max. So even though the number of RVN talks given is rather smaller than other venues, we seem to be generating an amount of academic discussion commensurate to that of a large international conference like WOCAL 2021, for example. Perhaps just as pertinent, because Rift Valley Network talks are recorded and made available online, they consistently go on to serve as important resources, often to network members who could not attend at the time of recording, and also other scholars and the public at large. We can see that this year in particular, immediate viewing figures have been exceptionally high, with videos being watched over 100 hours collectively already. This pattern is mirrored away from YouTube, where downloads of the recorded talks are over 300 in the first year alone. In total, Rift Valley Network talks have been downloaded thousands of times. Our attempts at encouraging gender equal participation continue, and I'll let us sit with these statistics for a little bit, as do our efforts to provide an equal platform for our Tanzanian colleagues. And again, these are statistics to sit with. But beyond statistics, and as is my annual tradition, I've gone back and re-listened to all of the talks and tried to pull out some common threads that run through them this year. So one major theme I saw this year was the attempt of many presenters to try and really say something coherent about the entire area. This was perhaps done more this year, I think, than many of the years past. So be this Amani Lusakello taking a regional view on cannabis terminology, or Roland Kiesling's attempt to come to terms with the commonalities that run through the oral traditions of the Tanzanian Rift. This is no doubt the result of the growing availability of data, as well as the improving coverage and quality, along with an increasing number of people who can now interpret this data in an accurate and nuanced way. Next, I'd like to look at how this year's series of talks reflected the Rift Valley Network's mission. We produced a mission statement a couple of years back, and I think it's useful to see the ways in which this enters into dialogue with the work of our members. In some ways, this is self-evident. So most of the contributions this year had something to say about the histories, languages, and cultures of the people of the Tanzanian Rift. This ranged from formal linguistic analysis of Maasai conducted by Amalek Bedar and Michael Karani, as well as Makarios Itambu's report on archaeological work conducted in and around Singida. Further, however, the RVN mission talks explicitly about dialogue between researchers and local people. I see this reflected in at least 3 of the talks given this year, from Jeroen van Ravenhorst and Nicholas Lotman's call for more effective digital distribution of archived language materials to local speaker communities, to John Walker's description of conducting community lexicography in Mara. Lizzie Poole and Helen Eaton's review of literacy work in and around the Tanzanian Rift is also an important contribution to sharing tools and best practices for community engagement and resource creation. Finally, and perhaps more so than any previous year, a large number of talks actually took us outside of the Tanzanian Rift as originally sort of demarcated, whatever that means, giving us a rich, varied, and complementary view of neighboring peoples and languages, such as Ilaria Micheli on Ogiek Orature, Martha Booker Johnson's examination of Hehe tense and aspect, Federico Falletti's analysis of Sengwer vowels, and Stanislav Beletsky's lexical study of Chigogo. We went further north to a historical reconstruction of Proto-Highland Cushitic by Ahmed Sosal, and ended off the series in Ethiopia with an examination of Kambata back channels by Yvonne Trace and colleagues. All of these examples are relevant to the work we are doing and serve to enrich the methodological and empirical basis upon which we draw. Finally, I would like now to talk about what comes next for the Rift Valley Network webinar series. And the answer is nothing, at least nothing immediately. After years of regular quality contributions, all of which require time and careful research to deliver, the idea has been proposed that we take a break for some time to refresh, take stock of what we've done so far, and prepare new material. And given that we're exactly 6 years in, there is no better time than now to announce a sabbatical. So from now until the beginning of 2026, the RVN will be taking a break from new webinar presentations, with the series due to kick off once again this coming January. In the meantime, all the existing talks can be found both on YouTube as well as on Zenodo. Additionally, our other regular events, including the reading group, the writing group, as well as our special semi-regular etymology sessions, are still ongoing. So as we head into our sabbatical, I congratulate all of us for a job well done, wish you all a good rest from the regular presentations, and remind you to expect to hear from me in the coming weeks and months as we plan out our 2026 series. Thank you.